It's time for something absolutely spectacular, a French patisserie classic, Gâteau Saint-Honoré. So let's start at the bottom. I've got a sheet of puff pastry rolled out to just shy of a 1/4 inch thick. You can make your own, or you can use the prepared frozen. But what I do is I take a 9-inch bottom of a tart shell and just simply cut a circle out. And this piece of puff pastry makes the base. There we go. And I simply bake it off all on its own. So it can puff up and become light and flaky. By docking with a fork, just piercing the pastry lightly, it allows the puff pastry to bake up more evenly. There we go. I've preheated my oven to 375, and this takes about 25 minutes until it's evenly golden on top. And while that pastry is baking, I can start on the caramelized sugar dip for my profiteroles. So I start with 3 tablespoons of water and a cup of sugar, and I start cooking that on the highest heat setting. The final ingredient, a tablespoon of corn syrup. I bring this to a boil without stirring, and I occasionally brush the sides of the pot just with a brush dipped in clean water. And once it reaches that nice light amber color, it'll be ready to use. And it was hard to resist, but I set aside 16 filled profiteroles. There, I'm just developing a nice light amber color. So now, to stop the cooking, I immerse it in a bowl with some water and ice. This also makes the sugar set a little bit, so it makes for easy dipping. And you want to tip the tops in, let some of the excess drip off, and then set it upside down on the baking tray. I've just lightly greased my parchment paper, so I know the profiteroles won't stick. It does take a few minutes for the dipped profiteroles to set. By that time, my puff pastry will be baked. Perfect. A beautiful golden brown. So I have one cooled and ready to assemble. And the first step is to top this with the pastry cream. This is the same vanilla bean pastry cream I used to fill the eclairs and profiteroles earlier. It only took about 1/3 of the pastry cream, so the rest I'm going to use on top of the gâteau. And I put it in the center. And just spread it not quite fully to the edges. Now, I've got the cooled profiteroles, and look at them with their lovely crowns, and they actually make the shape of a crown on the torte. So the pastry cream helps to keep them in place as you arrange them around. There, an absolute crown of caramel-dipped profiteroles. And the fun doesn't stop here. My addition, to integrate a little fresh fruit and a little color, some fresh raspberries on top of the pastry cream. And then, if that's not enough, I've got the whipped cream to put on top. So to this 1½ cups of whipping cream, I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of skim milk powder, and that's the secret to a whipped cream that remains stabilized. I'll also add 3 tablespoons of sugar and just a splash of vanilla. Instead of piping just simple plain whipped cream on top of the torte, I'm going to stir some raspberry puree into half of it. So then we'll have a pink whipped cream. This is just pureed raspberries with just a touch of sugar that had been strained. There we go. Now I've got 2 piping bags, one for each color of the whipped cream. And the finishing touch is to put swirls of whipped cream on top of the torte. And to do that, you just use a sort of figure-8 back and forth motion with a plain tip. And there it is, Gâteau Saint Honoré. Who would have guessed choux paste could look so elegant?